Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Droning Professor. Tonight we're going to learn about the science of lucid dreaming. So, as you make yourselves comfortable, please take a moment to let us know where you're listening from, and feel free to subscribe. Now, as always, take a moment for some deep breaths, letting your mind and body relax for a good night of sleep. Tonight, we're going to talk about something that sounds like it came straight out of a science fiction movie, but is actually a very real, very fascinating phenomenon that happens inside your brain every single night. We're talking about lucid dreaming, the bizarre and wonderful state where you're asleep, you're dreaming, and yet somehow you know you're dreaming. You're aware, you're conscious, and in many cases, you can control what happens next. Want to fly? Go ahead. Want to have a conversation with Abraham Lincoln while riding a dinosaur through a shopping mall? Why not? The laws of physics don't apply, and your alarm clock hasn't gone off yet. Now, before we dive deep into the neuroscience and psychology of lucid dreaming, let me start with a question. How many of you have ever been in a dream where something completely absurd was happening, like you were taking a chemistry class taught by your childhood dog? Or you looked down and realized you were wearing a suit made entirely of cheese, and you just accepted it? You didn't question it. You didn't think, hey, this seems weird. You just rolled with it. That's the normal state of dreaming. Our critical thinking faculties, our ability to say, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense, they're essentially offline when we dream. The prefrontal cortex, that part of your brain right behind your forehead that's responsible for logical reasoning, self-awareness, and decision-making, it's taking a nap while the rest of your brain throws a wild party in the back. But in a lucid dream, something remarkable happens. That prefrontal cortex wakes up just enough to let you realize, hey, I'm dreaming, and that changes everything. Let me tell you about the first time scientists proved that lucid dreaming was real. It's a great story. For most of human history, lucid dreaming was considered either a myth, a form of mysticism, or something that maybe happened but couldn't be studied scientifically. After all, how do you prove what's happening inside someone's head while they're asleep? You can't exactly wake them up and ask them without interrupting the dream. It's like trying to study Schrodinger's cat by opening the box. You've fundamentally changed the situation. But in 1975, a British psychologist named Keith Hearn was working with a volunteer named Alan Worsley, who claimed he could have lucid dreams regularly. Hearn had an idea. If Worsley could control his actions in a dream, maybe he could send a signal from inside the dream world to the waking world. The problem was, during REM sleep, which is when most vivid dreaming occurs, your body is essentially paralyzed. This is a good thing, by the way, because otherwise you'd be acting out your dreams, punching your partner when you dream about boxing, or running through walls when you dream about being chased by that childhood dog who's now somehow also a tax auditor. But there was one exception to this paralysis: your eyes. During REM sleep, your eyes move rapidly beneath your closed eyelids, hence the name rapid eye movement sleep. Hearn realized that if Worsley became lucid in a dream, he could move his eyes in a predetermined pattern, like Morse code, to signal that he was aware and conscious inside the dream. And it worked. On April 12, 1975, at about 8 in the morning, Alan Worsley was asleep in Hearn's lab, hooked up to an electrooculogram, a machine that tracks eye movements. Inside his dream, Worsley realized he was dreaming. He became lucid, and then, just as planned, he moved his eyes in the agreed-upon pattern. Left, right, 8 times in a row. On the polygraph machine in the lab, the pen scratched out the signal. It was the first message ever sent from the dream world to the waking world. The first proof that lucid dreaming was a real, measurable phenomenon. I like to think of it as humanity's first communication with an alternate dimension. Except that dimension is just inside our own heads, which is somehow even weirder. The really interesting research started happening in the 1980s when Stephen LaBerge at Stanford University began conducting more systematic studies of lucid dreaming. LaBerge himself was a lucid dreamer, and he refined the eye movement signaling technique. He had lucid dreamers perform various tasks in their dreams and signal when they began and when they finished. He had them hold their breath in dreams, do math problems, sing songs, even perform specific physical movements. And here's where it gets fascinating. When people held their breath in a lucid dream, their actual breathing patterns changed in the real world. When they sang, the areas of the brain associated with singing showed activity. When they moved their dream bodies, the corresponding motor cortex regions activated, even though their physical bodies remained paralyzed. The brain, it turns out, doesn't entirely distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones, especially during dreams. This has enormous implications, which we'll get to later. But first, let's talk about what's actually happening in your brain when you have a lucid dream. To understand this, we need to understand the basic architecture of sleep itself. Sleep isn't just one uniform state. You don't just close your eyes and enter some void where nothing happens for 8 hours. Sleep is a carefully orchestrated cycle of different stages, each with its own distinct brain activity, and you cycle through these stages multiple times per night. When you first fall asleep, you enter what we call stage 1 non-REM sleep, which is that light dozing state where you're kind of asleep but also kind of not. You might jerk awake suddenly because your brain thought you were falling, which is called a hypnic jerk and is completely normal, even though it makes you look ridiculous if you're trying to discreetly nap on an airplane. Then you move into stage 2, which is a slightly deeper sleep. Your heart rate slows, your body temperature drops, and your brain starts producing these characteristic patterns called sleep spindles and K-complexes, which sound like rejected names for breakfast cereals, but are actually specific waveforms that show up on an EEG. Then you go deeper into stages 3 and 4, which used to be considered separate but are now usually grouped together as stage 3, also called slow wave sleep or deep sleep. This is the heavy, restorative sleep where your brain produces large, slow delta waves. This is when your body does most of its physical repair and recovery. If someone tries to wake you from deep sleep, you'll be groggy and confused, and you might briefly wonder if you've been transported to an alternate dimension where everyone speaks backwards. Dreams can occur during deep sleep, but they're usually not very vivid or memorable. And then, about 90 minutes after you first fell asleep, you enter REM sleep. Your brain activity during REM sleep looks remarkably similar to waking brain activity. In fact, if I showed you an EEG of someone in REM sleep without telling you they were asleep, you might think they were awake. Your brain is busy, active, firing on all cylinders, but your body is paralyzed, thanks to your brainstem essentially shutting down your motor neurons. Your eyes dart back and forth under your eyelids. Your breathing becomes irregular. REM sleep is when the most vivid, bizarre, story-like dreams occur. And it's during REM sleep that lucid dreams typically happen. Your first REM period of the night might only last 10 minutes or so, but as the night goes on, your REM periods get longer. The last REM period of the night, right before you wake up, can last 30 to 60 minutes or even longer. This is why lucid dreams most commonly occur in early morning hours. You've got a long REM period. Your brain has had time to cycle through several rounds of sleep, and you're more likely to spontaneously wake up or hover in that in-between state where awareness can seep into the dream. So, what's different about the brain during a lucid dream compared to a regular dream? This is where the research gets really interesting. In 2009, a research team in Germany led by Ursula Voss conducted a study using EEG to measure brain activity during lucid dreaming. They found something remarkable. During regular REM dreams, the frontal and frontal-lateral areas of the brain, particularly the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, show reduced activity. This is why you accept absurdities in normal dreams. This part of your brain handles logical reasoning, working memory, and self-reflection, and it's essentially dimmed. But during lucid dreams, these areas showed increased activity in the gamma frequency band, specifically around 40 Hz. Gamma band activity is associated with higher level consciousness, attention, and awareness. It's as if that part of your brain that asks questions, that doubts, that reflects on itself, suddenly powers back on while you're still dreaming. Other neuroimaging studies have confirmed this. In 2012, researchers in Frankfurt used fMRI to scan people's brains during lucid dreams. They found increased activity in the frontopolar cortex, the anterior prefrontal cortex, and the precuneus, all areas associated with self-awareness, self-reflection, and evaluating your own thoughts and mental states. Essentially, the lucid dreaming brain has one foot in the dreaming world and one foot in the waking world. You've got the wild, uninhibited, associative creativity of REM sleep combined with the self-awareness and critical thinking of waking consciousness. It's like being the director and the actor in your own movie at the same time. Now, you might be wondering, can anyone learn to have lucid dreams? Or is this some special ability that only a few people have? The answer is yes. Most people can learn to have lucid dreams, though some people seem to be naturally better at it than others. Surveys suggest that about 55% of people have had at least one lucid dream in their lifetime, and about 23% have lucid dreams once a month or more. There are people called natural lucid dreamers who have them spontaneously all the time, sometimes several times per week, without even trying. For them, it's just a normal part of their sleep experience. But for most people, lucid dreaming is a skill that can be developed with practice. There are several techniques that have been shown to increase the frequency of lucid dreams. One of the most popular is reality testing. This involves regularly checking throughout your waking day whether you're dreaming or not. Now, I know what you're thinking, but I'm obviously awake right now. I can see you standing there making questionable jokes about sleep erections. Why would I need to check? But here's the thing. The habits and thought patterns you maintain during the day carry over into your dreams. If you make a habit of questioning whether you're awake, eventually you'll question it in a dream, and that's when you might realize, wait, I am dreaming. Reality testing can take many forms. Some people try to push their finger through their opposite palm. In waking life, solid matter is solid, and your finger won't go through. In a dream, it often will, which is deeply unsettling the first time it happens. Some people look at text, look away, and look back. In dreams, text tends to change or become gibberish when you look at it twice. Some people look at their hands and count their fingers. In dreams, you might have 6 fingers, or 12, or your hands might morph into lobster claws. The specific test doesn't matter as much as the habit of testing. You're training your brain to ask the question, am I dreaming? Another technique is called MILD, which stands for Mnemonic Induction of Lucid Dreams. This was developed by Stephen LaBerge, and it involves setting an intention to recognize that you're dreaming. Before you go to sleep, you repeat to yourself something like, the next time I'm dreaming, I will remember that I'm dreaming. You visualize yourself becoming lucid in a dream. You recall your most recent dream and imagine yourself recognizing it as a dream while it's happening. You're essentially programming your brain with the intention to be aware during dreams. There's also WBTB, or Wake Back to Bed. This takes advantage of the fact that REM periods are longer in the early morning hours. You set an alarm to wake yourself up after about 5 or 6 hours of sleep. Stay awake for a short period, maybe 30 to 60 minutes, and then go back to sleep. The idea is that you're keeping your conscious awareness more active as you transition back into REM sleep, making it more likely you'll carry that awareness into your dreams. This technique is more effective if you combine it with MILD or other practices during your wakeful period. Then there's WILD, Wake-Initiated Lucid Dream, which is probably the most difficult but also the most reliable technique once you master it. This involves maintaining consciousness while your body falls asleep. You lie still and let your body relax completely while keeping your mind aware and alert. You might experience what's called sleep paralysis, where your body is paralyzed but your mind is awake, which can be terrifying if you don't know what's happening. You might hallucinate, seeing shadows or figures in your room, feeling a presence or feeling like something is sitting on your chest. This is your brain in a very confused state, partially in REM sleep with dream imagery bleeding into your waking perception. But if you can stay calm and keep the process going, you can transition directly into a lucid dream from waking consciousness, which is wild. You get to watch the dream form around you. You see the darkness behind your eyelids coalesce into shapes and colors, and suddenly you're in a fully formed dream world, completely aware that you're dreaming. There are also various supplements and medications that people use to try to enhance lucid dreaming, though I want to be clear that this is an area where you should be cautious and do your own research. One of the most commonly used is galantamine, which is actually an Alzheimer's medication that works by inhibiting the breakdown of acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that's heavily involved in REM sleep and dreaming. Some studies have shown that galantamine, especially when combined with WBTB, can significantly increase the likelihood of having a lucid dream. There's also some evidence that vitamin B6 might enhance dream vividness and recall, though the research is mixed. And, of course, there are countless people who swear by various herbs, teas, or supplements, though for most of these, the evidence is anecdotal at best. One thing I should mention is that certain habits can inhibit dreaming and lucid dreaming. Alcohol, for example, suppresses REM sleep, especially in the first half of the night. You might fall asleep faster after drinking, but you're getting lower quality sleep and less dream time. Marijuana also suppresses REM sleep, and chronic users often report that they don't dream at all, or at least don't remember their dreams. Interestingly, when chronic marijuana users quit, they often experience a REM rebound where they have incredibly vivid and intense dreams as their brain catches up on all the REM sleep it's been missing. It's like your brain was storing up dreams and suddenly releases them all at once. Many sleep medications, particularly benzodiazepines, also suppress REM sleep. Now, let's talk about what you can actually do in a lucid dream. For many people, the first instinct when they become lucid is to fly. There's something deeply appealing about the idea of flying, and in a dream, you can do it. You can jump and soar. You can zoom over landscapes. You can do barrel rolls. Some people describe it as the most exhilarating experience they've ever had, more thrilling than any roller coaster or skydive because you're completely in control and there's absolutely no danger. Other people use lucid dreams to have conversations with dream characters, which raises some interesting philosophical questions. Who are these dream characters? Are they independent entities with their own consciousness, or are they just aspects of your own mind? The evidence strongly suggests the latter. They're essentially NPCs, non-player characters, in the video game of your dream, but they're NPCs created by your own unconscious mind, which means they might say surprising things that feel like they came from somewhere else, but ultimately they're you. Lucid dreaming also has some genuinely interesting practical applications. One of the most promising is treating nightmares, particularly recurrent nightmares and nightmares associated with PTSD. In a technique called imagery rehearsal therapy, people are taught to visualize their nightmares while awake and imagine different, less frightening outcomes. When you combine this with lucid dreaming training, people can learn to become lucid during a nightmare and actively change what's happening. If you're being chased by a monster, you can turn around and confront it, or turn it into something harmless, or fly away. The nightmare loses its power because you realize it's just a dream and you have control. Several studies have shown that lucid dreaming therapy can significantly reduce nightmare frequency and intensity in people with PTSD and other anxiety disorders. Lucid dreaming might also be useful for motor skill practice and rehabilitation. Remember how I mentioned earlier that when you move in a lucid dream, the corresponding motor cortex areas activate? This suggests that practicing physical skills in lucid dreams might actually strengthen the neural pathways associated with those skills in real life. There have been some small studies suggesting that athletes who practice their sport in lucid dreams show improvement in their real-world performance. A German researcher named Erlacher conducted several studies where lucid dreamers practiced specific motor tasks like tossing coins into a cup or doing finger exercises, and they showed improvement when they later performed these tasks while awake. The improvement wasn't as large as actually practicing in real life, but it was there. This has potential implications for physical rehabilitation. If someone has an injury and can't physically practice a movement, could they practice it in lucid dreams to maintain the neural pathways? Could stroke victims use lucid dreaming as part of their rehabilitation to rebuild damaged motor circuits? The research here is still very preliminary, but it's intriguing. At the very least, lucid dreaming might be useful for mental rehearsal and visualization, which athletes have been using for decades. Another potential application is creative problem solving. There are numerous anecdotes of people solving problems or getting creative insights from dreams. The chemist Auguste Kekulé supposedly discovered the ring structure of benzene after dreaming of a snake eating its own tail. Paul McCartney claimed the melody for "Yesterday" came to him in a dream. Mary Shelley got the idea for Frankenstein from a dream. Now, it's impossible to know how accurate these stories are, and there's probably some mythologizing going on, but the basic idea makes sense. During REM sleep, your brain makes unusual associations and connections. The normal logical constraints are loosened. Things that would never go together in waking thought get mashed together in dreams. This is why dreams are so bizarre, but it's also why they can be creative. In a lucid dream, you have the ability to direct this creative process. You can pose a problem to your dreaming mind and see what it comes up with. You can explore symbolic or metaphorical representations of problems you're facing. Some people have found that their dream characters, representing different aspects of their own mind, can offer interesting perspectives on their problems. Again, the research here is limited, but there are enough anecdotes and preliminary studies to suggest that lucid dreaming might be a useful tool for enhancing creativity. There is also the simple psychological benefit of having regular lucid dreams. Many lucid dreamers report feeling more confident, more in control of their lives, and less anxious. This makes sense. If you can learn to control your dreams, environments that start out as nightmares or anxiety-provoking situations, then you might feel more empowered to handle challenges in your waking life. There's something psychologically powerful about realizing that you have more control than you thought you did, even if it's just control over your dreams. Now, I want to address some of the criticisms and concerns about lucid dreaming. Some people worry that lucid dreaming might interfere with the normal functions of sleep and dreaming. After all, if dreams serve some important purpose, like processing emotions or consolidating memories, might lucid dreaming disrupt that process? It's a valid concern, but so far there's no evidence that lucid dreaming is harmful in this way. Lucid dreams are still dreams. They still occur during REM sleep. The brain is still doing many of the same things it does during normal dreams. The main difference is that you have more awareness and control. It's not like you're preventing your brain from dreaming. You're just changing your relationship to the dreams you're already having. Some people also worry about the potential for lucid dreaming to become a form of escapism. If you can have any experience you want in a dream, if you can live out fantasies and desires without any real-world constraints, might you become less motivated to engage with real life? Might you prefer the dream world to the real world? This is a more philosophical concern, and it's similar to concerns people have raised about virtual reality or video games. Could a sufficiently realistic simulation become preferable to reality? I think the answer is that it's possible for some people, but most lucid dreamers don't report this being a problem. Dreams, even lucid dreams, lack a lot of the richness and sensory detail of waking life. They're unstable and hard to maintain. They end when you wake up. And fundamentally, most people are pretty good at distinguishing between experiences that truly matter and experiences that are just entertainment or exploration. But it's something to be aware of, especially if you find yourself spending more time trying to get back to sleep to continue a dream than you spend engaging with your actual life. There's also a phenomenon called false awakenings, which are common among lucid dreamers and can be deeply unsettling. A false awakening is when you dream that you've woken up. You might dream that you got out of bed, started your morning routine, got dressed, made breakfast, and then suddenly you actually wake up and realize you're still in bed and now you have to do it all over again. Sometimes false awakenings can chain together. You wake up, realize you were dreaming, feel relieved, go about your day, and then wake up again. This can happen multiple times in a row. Some people experience dozens of false awakenings in a single night. It can make you feel like you're trapped, like you can never really wake up, like reality itself has become unstable. The movie Inception played with this idea, where characters needed a kick to wake up and could lose track of what level of dreams they were in. In reality, it's not quite that dramatic, but false awakenings can be disorienting and frustrating. Let's talk for a moment about the history and culture of lucid dreaming, because humans have been aware of this phenomenon for a very long time. The earliest written reference we have to lucid dreaming comes from a letter written by St. Augustine in about 415 CE, where he describes a friend's experience of being aware during a dream. But the most systematic early practice of lucid dreaming comes from Tibetan Buddhism, specifically a practice called dream yoga. Tibetan Buddhist monks have been practicing lucid dreaming as a spiritual discipline for over 1,000 years. For them, lucid dreaming is not just entertainment or a psychological curiosity, it's a path to enlightenment. The logic goes something like this. In Tibetan Buddhism, there's a concept that ordinary waking life is itself like a dream, in the sense that it's impermanent, it's constructed by our perceptions and mental habits, and we're mostly not fully aware of its true nature. We sleepwalk through our days, reacting to things automatically, without true awareness or choice. Meditation practices aim to wake us up to the true nature of reality, to see things clearly without the filters of our conditioning and assumptions. Dream yoga uses lucid dreaming as a training ground for this awakening. If you can become lucid in a dream, recognizing it as a dream while it's happening, you're developing the same skill of awareness and recognition that you need to wake up in ordinary life. You're training your mind to see through illusions, to recognize the constructed nature of experience, and to maintain awareness in altered states of consciousness. Dream yoga practitioners do things in their lucid dreams that seem very strange from a Western perspective. They don't just fly around or have adventures. They practice transforming dream objects, dissolving the dream entirely into emptiness, examining the nature of the dream characters and recognizing them as projections of their own mind, and ultimately trying to maintain awareness even in the deep sleep states beyond dreaming. The goal is to remain continuously aware 24 hours a day, through waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Very few people achieve this, but it's the ideal. There are also lucid dreaming practices in other spiritual traditions. Some forms of Sufism have dream practices. Some indigenous cultures have traditions of dream control and navigating dream worlds. In the West, the concept was largely forgotten or dismissed until it was rediscovered in the 19th and 20th centuries. A Dutch psychiatrist named Frederik van Eden coined the term lucid dream in 1913, and a French scholar named Marquis de Hervé de Saint-Denis wrote an entire book about his lucid dreaming experiences back in 1867, though it wasn't translated into English until much later. But it wasn't until the 1970s and 80s, with the work of Keith Hearn and Stephen Laberge, that lucid dreaming was scientifically validated and became a topic of serious research. Today, there's a whole community of lucid dreamers, mostly online, sharing techniques, experiences, and advice. There are apps designed to help induce lucid dreams, using things like timed audio cues that play during REM sleep to remind you you're dreaming without fully waking you up. There are even devices you can wear to bed that detect REM sleep and provide subtle stimuli, like gentle flashing lights through your closed eyelids or vibrations, to trigger lucidity. The effectiveness of these devices is debated, and they're certainly not necessary. People were having lucid dreams for thousands of years without any technology, but they can be helpful tools for some people. One of the most fascinating aspects of lucid dreaming research is what it tells us about consciousness itself. Lucid dreaming provides a unique window into the nature of awareness and the structure of subjective experience. When you're having a lucid dream, you have a very clear sense of being a conscious, aware self, having experiences in a world. But that self is in a sleeping body. That world is entirely constructed by your own brain. Those experiences have no external referent, and yet they feel real. In many cases, they feel as real as waking experience, sometimes even more vivid and emotionally intense. This raises profound questions. What is consciousness, if it can exist completely divorced from external reality? What is the self, if you can have a clear, coherent sense of being a self, while that self is wandering through a landscape made of your own imagination? Philosophers have long debated whether we can ever know if we're living in a simulation, or if there's any meaningful difference between a perfect simulation and reality. Lucid dreaming suggests that our brains are already simulations, constructing a model of reality from sensory data and then presenting that model to consciousness as if it were the real thing. In a dream, the sensory data is generated internally rather than externally, but the simulation process is the same. The philosopher Thomas Metzinger has written about lucid dreaming as an example of what he calls the phenomenal self-model, the brain's representation of itself as a self in a world. In both waking and dreaming, your brain constructs a model of you and a model of the world, and consciousness is what it feels like to be inside that model. In normal dreams, the model is running, but you don't have what Metzinger calls epistemic access to the fact that it's a model. You're identified with it. You think it's reality. In a lucid dream, you gain epistemic access. You step back and recognize the model as a model. You see the simulation for what it is while remaining inside it. This might be the closest we can come to understanding the relationship between consciousness and the brain, because it's a situation where we can literally watch consciousness construct reality from nothing and then recognize what it's doing. There's also interesting research on what happens to your sense of self and agency in lucid dreams. When you control things in a lucid dream, are you really exerting agency, or are you just observing your dreaming mind play out a different script? Some researchers argue that lucid dream control is illusory, that what's really happening is your conscious awareness is being presented with multiple possible dream narratives generated by unconscious processes, and you're choosing between them, but you're not actually creating them from scratch. This is a bit like the debate in neuroscience about free will. When you decide to move your arm, there's neural activity in your brain that precedes your conscious awareness of deciding. So, did you really decide, or did your brain decide and then tell you about it? In lucid dreams, this question becomes even more interesting because you can sometimes observe the process happening in real time. You might intend to make a building appear, and then watch as your dreaming mind sort of tries to comply, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, sometimes producing something unexpected. Let me tell you about a concept called dream stability, because this is something every lucid dreamer has to grapple with. When you first become lucid in a dream, there's a risk of waking up immediately. The excitement and surprise of realizing you're dreaming can be enough to jar you awake. It's frustrating. You finally achieve lucidity, and 3 seconds later you're lying in bed in the dark thinking, damn it. Experienced lucid dreamers develop techniques to stabilize dreams and make them last longer. Some people spin around in the dream, which somehow helps maintain the dream state. Some people rub their hands together or touch objects in the dream to ground themselves in the dream environment. Some people look at their hands or the ground and focus on the details, which reinforces the dream imagery. The logic seems to be that you need to keep your attention engaged with the dream content without getting too excited or too analytical, either of which can wake you up. Even with good stabilization techniques, most lucid dreams only last a few minutes at most. though subjective time in dreams can be tricky. There's a popular idea that time moves differently in dreams, that you can have hours of dream experience in just minutes of real time. This was taken to an extreme in the movie Inception, where each level of dreams within dreams supposedly ran at a different time rate, so that 5 minutes in one dream could be an hour in a deeper dream. In reality, research suggests that time perception in dreams is pretty close to waking time perception. When lucid dreamers were asked to estimate how much time had passed in a dream and signal at specific intervals, their estimates were fairly accurate. They weren't living out hours of dream experience in minutes of real time. However, memory and narrative in dreams can be compressed in odd ways. You might remember a dream as if it lasted a long time, or a dream might contain references to events that supposedly happened earlier in the dream but that you have no actual memory of experiencing. The dream creates a false sense of duration through implied backstory and narrative jumps. One of the coolest experiments done on lucid dreaming involved asking people to do mathematical calculations in their dreams. In 2021, a team of researchers conducted a study where they communicated with lucid dreamers in real time using external stimuli. They would ask the sleeper a simple math problem by flashing lights or making sounds in patterns, and the lucid dreamer would answer by moving their eyes in a code. So the researchers might ask, "What is 8 minus 6? By flashing 8 times, making a specific sound to indicate subtraction, and then flashing 6 times. The sleeper, inside their dream, would perceive these flashes and sounds, do the math, and answer by moving their eyes 2 times for the answer to. And it worked. Multiple participants were able to answer math questions, respond yes or no to questions, and otherwise communicate from inside their dreams. It was like the experiment Keith Hearn did in 1975, but much more sophisticated. The researchers called it interactive dreaming, and it demonstrated that the boundary between the dreaming mind and the external world is more permeable than we thought. This research opens up wild possibilities. Could we eventually have full conversations with sleeping people? Could we send information into dreams to be learned or processed? Could we troubleshoot nightmares in real time by communicating with the dreamer? There are ethical questions here too. If we can communicate with sleeping people, can they meaningfully consent to what's happening? Is there a privacy concern about accessing someone's dreams? But the potential is enormous, both for understanding dreams and consciousness, and for practical applications. Now let's talk about what scientists think dreams are for in the first place. Because if we're going to mess around with our dreams by making them lucid, we should probably understand what function they serve. The truth is, we still don't entirely know why we dream, or even why we sleep. Sleep seems to be universal among animals. Even insects and jellyfish show sleep-like states. Humans deprived of sleep for long periods become psychotic and can die from it, though it's hard to separate the effects of sleep deprivation from the stress and methods used to keep them awake. Sleep is clearly important, but exactly what it does and why we evolved to spend a third of our lives unconscious and vulnerable is still debated. There are several theories about the function of dreams specifically. One theory is that dreams are a form of threat simulation. During REM sleep, your brain generates random scenarios, many of which involve danger, conflict, or challenges, and you practice responding to them. This is why so many dreams involve being chased, being in danger, or dealing with threatening situations. It's your brain's way of running drills, keeping your threat response systems sharp. This theory is supported by the fact that people who have experienced trauma often have more nightmares, as if their brains are trying to process and prepare for similar threats in the future. Another theory is that dreams are involved in memory consolidation. During sleep, your brain replays and processes the experiences and information from the day, deciding what to keep, what to discard, and how to integrate new information with existing memories. Studies have shown that people who sleep after learning new information retain it better than people who stay awake. Dreams might be the brain's way of filing memories, creating connections between new and old information and strengthening important neural pathways. The bizarre associative nature of dreams might reflect the brain's filing system, where memories are linked not by logical connections but by emotional associations, sensory similarities, or thematic content. A related theory is that dreams serve an emotional regulation function. During REM sleep, the brain processes emotional experiences from the day, particularly negative or stressful ones, and integrates them in a way that reduces their emotional impact. This is why people often feel better about problems after sleeping on it. The dream state might allow you to confront difficult emotions in a safe, detached way. Interestingly, during REM sleep, the amygdala, which processes emotions, is very active, but the production of noradrenaline, a stress-related neurotransmitter, is suppressed. So, you're emotionally engaged but not physiologically stressed. It's like exposure therapy, where you confront scary or upsetting things in a controlled way until they lose their power over you. Then there's the activation synthesis hypothesis, proposed by Alan Hobson and Robert McCarley in 1977. This theory suggests that dreams don't really have a function at all. They're just a side effect of random neural firing during REM sleep. Your brainstem generates random signals, and your cortex tries to make sense of them by synthesizing them into a narrative. Dreams are bizarre because the input is random noise, and your brain is doing its best to construct a coherent story from chaos. This theory was popular for a while, but has fallen out of favor because it doesn't explain why dreams have the specific characteristics they do, like recurring themes, emotional content tied to your waking life, and the capacity to be influenced by external stimuli. The truth is probably that dreams serve multiple functions, and different types of dreams might serve different purposes. REM dreams are different from non-REM dreams. Dreams early in the night are different from dreams later in the night, and individual dreams probably vary in their function depending on what's going on in your life and your brain at that moment. The important point for our purposes is that lucid dreaming doesn't seem to interfere with these functions. Your brain is still processing, consolidating, and regulating while you're lucid. You're just aware of it happening. There's also the question of whether everyone experiences dreams the same way. Most people dream primarily in visual imagery, seeing things in their dreams much like they see things while awake. But some people dream in other sensory modalities. Blind people who lost their sight early in life often don't have visual dreams. They might dream in sounds, tactile sensations, and spatial awareness. People who are born deaf often report more vivid and complex visual dreams, as if their brains compensate for the lack of auditory input. This tells us that dreams are constructed from whatever sensory and memory systems you have available. The brain is remarkably flexible in how it generates the dream experience. There's also individual variation in how vivid and memorable dreams are. Some people wake up every morning with detailed memories of multiple dreams. Other people claim they never dream at all, though research shows they do. They just don't remember their dreams. Dream recall is its own skill that can be improved with practice. If you write down your dreams every morning, even if you only remember fragments, your recall will improve over time. Keeping a dream journal is actually one of the foundational practices for learning to lucid dream, because you can't become lucid in a dream if you don't remember your dreams in the first place. The act of recording dreams also helps you identify recurring dream signs, those weird elements or patterns that show up in your dreams regularly. Maybe you often dream about your childhood home, or about being late for something, or about your teeth falling out. When you recognize these patterns, you can use them as cues. If you're in your childhood home, that's a good time to do a reality check, because you might be dreaming. Let me tell you about some of the weirder phenomena associated with lucid dreaming and the borderlands of sleep. First, there's sleep paralysis, which I mentioned earlier. This occurs when you're conscious, but your body is still in the paralyzed state of REM sleep. Sleep paralysis is actually quite common. About 8% of people experience it at some point in their lives, and it's more common in people who have irregular sleep schedules or who are sleep deprived. During sleep paralysis, you can't move, you can't speak, you often feel like you can't breathe properly, and you might hallucinate. The hallucinations fall into a few categories. There are intruder hallucinations, where you sense a threatening presence in the room, sometimes see a shadowy figure, and feel intense fear. There are incubus hallucinations, where you feel pressure on your chest, as if something is sitting on you, and have difficulty breathing. And there are vestibular motor hallucinations, where you feel like you're floating, flying, or falling, or having an out-of-body experience. These hallucinations are terrifying if you don't know what's happening. Throughout history and across cultures, sleep paralysis has been interpreted as demonic attack, alien abduction, visitation by spirits, or being cursed. The old hag phenomenon in Newfoundland folklore, where a witch sits on your chest and suffocates you, is sleep paralysis. The succubus and incubus demons of medieval Europe, who would sexually assault people in their sleep, are sleep paralysis. Many alleged alien abduction experiences, where people wake up paralyzed and see gray aliens standing by their bed, are probably sleep paralysis combined with cultural expectations about what aliens look like. Once you know what sleep paralysis is and that it's harmless, it becomes much less scary, though still unpleasant. Some people who practice wild techniques for lucid dreaming learn to use sleep paralysis as a gateway. Instead of panicking, they relax into it and transition into a lucid dream. There's also the phenomenon of exploding head syndrome, which is a fantastic name for something that's not actually dangerous. This is when you're falling asleep or waking up, and you suddenly hear a loud noise, like a gunshot, cymbal crash, or explosion. It can be startling and frightening, but it's harmless. It's thought to be caused by a brief surge of neural activity in the auditory cortex as you transition between sleep stages. Some people experience it regularly, and it's often accompanied by a flash of light or a feeling of electrical shock. Despite the dramatic name, it's not a sign of anything wrong with your brain. Then there are hypnagogic and hypnopompic hallucinations. Hypnagogic hallucinations occur as you're falling asleep, and hypnopompic hallucinations occur as you're waking up. These can be visual, auditory, tactile, or even olfactory. You might see patterns, faces, or scenes. You might hear voices, music, or other sounds. You might feel like you're falling or floating. These are essentially mini-dreams that occur in the transition between waking and sleeping, when your brain is in a mixed state. They're completely normal, though they can be unsettling if you're not expecting them. Some creative people report that they get their best ideas during these transitional states, when the rational mind has relaxed but awareness is still present. There's a related state called the hypnagogic state, which is that drowsy, half-asleep state where your thoughts become loose and associative. Thomas Edison supposedly used to nap in a chair holding metal balls in his hands, positioned over metal plates on the floor. As he drifted into sleep, his hands would relax. The balls would drop and clang against the plates, waking him up. He believed that the drowsy state just before sleep was when he had his most creative insights, and he wanted to catch those insights before falling fully asleep. Salvador Dali reportedly did something similar, napping while holding a key over a plate. The artist in me appreciates the drama of this approach to creativity. Now, I want to address a question that often comes up. Can you get stuck in a lucid dream? Can you dream that you're dreaming, infinitely nested like Russian dolls, unable to find your way back to reality? The short answer is no. You will eventually wake up. Your body has needs. Your bladder will fill. Your sleep cycle will complete. External stimuli will intrude. The dream state is inherently unstable. That said, you can have multiple false awakenings in a row, which can feel like being stuck, but you're not actually stuck. You're just experiencing a series of dreams with a common theme. Eventually, you wake up for real, and then you're just tired and annoyed and possibly questioning the nature of reality. The movie Inception played with the idea of getting lost in dreams, of spending so much time in nested dream levels that you forget what's real. It also suggested that you could grow old and live a lifetime in a dream. This is fiction. While time perception can feel subjective in dreams, you're not actually living years in minutes. Your brain is not capable of generating and processing that much coherent experience in a short time. Think about how much computation would be required to simulate every moment of a year with full sensory detail and narrative continuity. Your sleeping brain, running on about 20 watts of power, is not doing that. What can happen is that a dream might give you the feeling or memory of having spent a long time somewhere, but it's more like a summary or impression than a lived experience. You dream that you've been on a journey for years, but you don't actually experience every moment of those years. Let's talk about shared dreaming, because this is another popular idea that shows up in fiction. Can two people have the same dream at the same time? Can you meet someone else inside a dream and both remember the encounter? This is a staple of fantasy and science fiction, but there's no credible evidence that it's real. What does happen is that people who know each other well and talk about their dreams might have dreams with similar themes or elements, because they share experiences, concerns, and conversations. If two people both dream about being back in high school, that's not a shared dream. That's both people processing common anxieties using common symbols. There are anecdotal reports of people claiming to have shared dreams where they compared notes and found surprising similarities, but these can be explained by coincidence, cryptomnesia, where you forget that you learned something and later think you dreamed it, or unconscious collaboration, where your memory of the dream is influenced by the other person's description. In 2021, there was that study I mentioned earlier where researchers communicated with lucid dreamers in real time. In principle, you could have two lucid dreamers in separate labs and relay messages between them through the researchers. Person A says something by eye movements. The researchers decode it and send it to person B through flashing lights, and person B responds through eye movements. That's not really a shared dream, though. That's two people in separate dreams communicating through a third party, but it's the closest we've come to making shared dreaming real. I want to spend a moment on the ethical implications of lucid dreaming research and practice. As the technology improves and we get better at inducing lucid dreams, controlling their content, and communicating with dreamers, we need to think about consent and privacy. If someone is asleep and we can send them messages or alter their dream content, are we violating their autonomy? If we can record or decode dream content, do people have a right to privacy in their own dreams? These questions sound like science fiction, but they're becoming increasingly relevant. There are already apps and devices that claim to influence your dreams, and while most of them don't work very well, the technology will improve. There's also the question of what happens when lucid dreaming becomes commercialized. Right now, it's a niche interest, pursued mostly by hobbyists and researchers. But what if someone develops a reliable method to induce specific dream experiences? Could dreams become a form of entertainment, marketed and sold? Could people become addicted to dream experiences? Could there be inequality in access to dream technologies, where the wealthy have amazing, tailored dream experiences and the poor don't? These might seem like far-fetched concerns, but remember that every new technology raises similar questions. We've had to grapple with the ethics of the internet, social media, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence. Dreams might be next. On a more philosophical level, lucid dreaming raises questions about the value and meaning of different types of experience. Is a lucid dream experience less valuable than a waking experience because it's just a dream? If you have a profound emotional connection with someone in a dream, does that matter? If you overcome a fear in a dream, does that count as real personal growth? I think the answer depends on what you mean by real and valuable. The experience itself is real in the sense that it happened, you felt it, and it's part of your life history. The psychological effects are real, the memories are real. The fact that the experience was generated entirely by your own brain doesn't make it meaningless. In some ways, That makes it more interesting. You created an entire world, populated it with characters, gave yourself challenges, and grew from the experience. That's not nothing. Let me bring this back to neuroscience for a moment, because there's some fascinating research on what lucid dreaming can tell us about the brain. One area of interest is the default mode network, a set of brain regions that are active when you're not focused on the external world, when you're daydreaming, remembering the past, imagining the future, or thinking about yourself. The default mode network is kind of like your brain's screensaver. It kicks in when you're not actively processing external information. During regular dreams, the default mode network is very active, which makes sense because dreaming is the ultimate internal, self-referential activity. During lucid dreams, there's increased connectivity between the default mode network and the frontoparietal network, which is involved in executive control and attention. It's like your brain is maintaining its internal, imaginative mode, while also engaging its executive, attentive mode. This unusual combination of networks being active together might explain the unique character of lucid dreaming. There's also research on how the brain represents the body in dreams. When you have a body in a dream, your brain is generating a simulation of your body using the same systems it uses to represent your body when you're awake. This is why dreams feel embodied, why you can walk and gesture and interact with dream objects. In lucid dreams, some people report being able to change their dream body, becoming taller, shorter, a different gender, an animal, or even a non-corporeal presence. When people do this, there are corresponding changes in how the brain represents the body. It's a remarkable demonstration of the brain's flexibility in constructing the sense of self. There's a related phenomenon called phantom limb sensation, where people who have lost a limb still feel sensations from it, often including pain. This occurs because the brain's map of the body doesn't immediately update when the body changes. The neural circuits that represented the missing limb are still there, still active, and still generating sensations. Interestingly, some research suggests that lucid dreaming might be helpful for people with phantom limb pain. In a lucid dream, they can visualize their missing limb as healthy and pain-free, and this can sometimes reduce the phantom pain in waking life. The brain's body map is malleable, and dream experiences can influence it. Before we wrap up, I want to share a few practical tips for anyone who wants to try lucid dreaming. First, be patient. For most people, it takes weeks or months of practice before they have their first lucid dream. Don't get discouraged. Second, keep a dream journal. This is essential. Write down whatever you remember as soon as you wake up, even if it's just fragments. Over time, your recall will improve, and you'll start to notice patterns. Third, practice reality testing throughout the day. Make it a habit to pause and ask yourself, am I dreaming right now? And do a reality check. Fourth, set intentions before sleep. As you're falling asleep, repeat to yourself that you will recognize when you're dreaming. Fifth, try the WBTB technique. Set an alarm for 5 or 6 hours after you go to bed. Stay awake for 30 to 60 minutes, and then go back to sleep with the intention of becoming lucid. Sixth, be aware of your sleep quality. You're more likely to have lucid dreams when you're well rested and sleeping regularly. Stress, alcohol, and sleep deprivation all make lucid dreaming harder. And here's a final tip. When you do become lucid, don't get too excited. I know, easier said than done, but strong emotions can wake you up. Stay calm, focus on the dream environment, and give yourself simple, achievable goals at first. Don't try to fly across the universe or summon a dragon on your first lucid dream. Just try to stabilize the dream, walk around, and explore. Build up to more ambitious goals as you get more experienced. Lucid dreaming is a skill, and like any skill, it develops with practice. There's something profound about lucid dreaming that goes beyond the science and the techniques. It's an experience of radical freedom, bounded only by your imagination and your ability to maintain the dream state. In waking life, we're constrained by physics, biology, social norms, and our own limitations. In a lucid dream, those constraints vanish. You can do anything, be anything, go anywhere. You can have conversations with parts of yourself, explore symbolic landscapes, face your fears, or just have fun. And when you wake up, you're reminded that your experience of reality, whether waking or dreaming, is constructed by your brain. The boundary between the real and the imagined is more permeable than we usually think. This isn't to say that waking life and dream life are equivalent. Obviously, waking life has stakes and consequences that dreams don't have. Your actions in waking life matter to other people. Physics is not optional, but the realization that your brain is constantly constructing your experience, constantly interpreting and filtering and modeling reality, and that you have some degree of influence over that process, that's valuable knowledge. It can make you more aware, more intentional, more flexible in how you relate to your own mind. In the end, lucid dreaming is a window into consciousness itself, a way of exploring the strange, vast, largely unmapped territory of the mind. We spend a third of our lives asleep, much of that time dreaming, and for most of human history, we've been passengers in our own dreams, observing but not directing. Lucid dreaming lets us take the wheel, at least occasionally. It lets us explore what it means to be conscious, to have experiences, to construct meaning from the raw material of neural activity. And it's a hell of a lot of fun. So I encourage you to try it if you're interested. Keep a dream journal, practice reality testing, set intentions, be patient. And if you do have a lucid dream, pay attention to what it feels like, what you learn, and how it changes your relationship to your waking life. You might find that becoming lucid in your dreams helps you become more lucid in your waking life, more aware, more present, more intentional. Or you might just have some really cool dreams where you can fly. Either way, it's worth exploring. Good night, everyone. Sweet dreams. And if you realize you're dreaming tonight, remember to try spinning around or rubbing your hands together to stabilize the dream. And for the love of God, don't try to read a book in a dream. The text will just turn into gibberish, and you'll waste your lucid time getting frustrated at your brain's inability to simulate consistent written language. Trust me on that one. And in case you've enjoyed our evening talk so much and still might be awake, here is another educational video for you.